Dave Hobbins here, and 32 years of teaching,
Not as many as you.
forest inventory, and insects and diseased trees. He lives in Fort Kent with his wife Janine, and pursues his interests in travel, camping, hiking, history, backyard astronomy, bees, and enjoying this woodlot right here that we have. And most of the road on the other side is part of it.
Yeah, not over here, but down there. That was my first woodlot.
And he's a past board member and chairperson of the St. John Valley Senior College. So he's been associated with us in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, great group of people.
And we appreciate all that he has done for our organization, and hope that you will join us in welcoming him to this class as he shows us the finer points of ornamental tree branch pruning.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks. Thank you, fan. Somebody asked me about pruning when I did the tree talk last fall, so I got thinking it's been, what, how many years since the last one? It's quite a bit. So I made one mistake. I had a hard hat with a screen, but I still got sawdust through it when I was pruning with a handsaw. So I bought safety glasses this time because I knew Laura would be here. And I didn't want to embarrass her as a fellow forester. I thought we'd go over some basics and then actually get up close and look at a couple of branches. We'll do two and then see how it goes from there. But in the fall class, somebody asked me about paint. And so I did some research since. And what surprised me, University of Arizona, I assumed that like the origins of arboriculture and, yard tree care really came out of Illinois, Champlain, University of Illinois, Champaign, Urbana-Champaign. So I'm expecting to see them in the literature, but University of Arizona, and they say no paint. No. So if you remember, I was hedging my bets in the fall. I do not use it because you can't guarantee that it's not going to slow down the healing process, with one exception, which we don't have to worry about up here, which is oak wilt. Oak wilt, and I'll talk about it again perhaps, up till about 7-10 years ago was never north of the Susquehanna River. It was always south of the Susquehanna River. It's a fungal disease that's transmitted by insects feeding on trees, and they love sap, the insects, and they will get this fungus in the tree and then it kills off the tree. So anyway, that would be probably the only exception of where you might want to use a paint. But there's, on oak, I would say you'd safe if you did, which we'll talk about the when in just a minute. But on oak, you could do this time of year. Actually, I prefer to do later when the leaves are definitely off the trees and the tree is dormant. You may still want to paint in case there's a little bit of run in the spring with the oak. Other than that, don't use paint. So let me back up, and I'm sorry I don't have comfortable chairs for you, but this won't be an hour and a half or an hour, I don't think. But and I'll try to make it quick. There's a lot of... Well, I did a lot of training in forest pathology, and Cornell University, they were sticklers for terminology, right? And you had to, I knew a guy who got a master's degree from West Virginia University, went for his PhD at Cornell. They made him take over all the intro to pathology courses because they wanted him to know their terminology. And I understand why, because here's a good example. Well, as Laura knows, and some of you I'm sure know, what's a popple? Are we talking quaking aspen, Boston poplar, big-tooth aspen, even what people around here call white popple, which is Populus alba, or white something, white maple, silver maple. They call it silver maple, but it's not even a maple. So anyway, I may have told you this story, But one of my favorite stories from teaching, we were in the lab, and there were a couple students, a senior in forestry and a first year student. And the first year student, really great, both of them great guys, says to me, Dave, why the heck do we have, he had just come from a dendrology class, right? Latin names galore up there with Dr. Salva. Why do we have to know these Latin names? Don't the working foresters use common names? I said, yeah, they do, but what are you going to do when somebody says Pablo? And so I explained and stuff, and Steve, the guy in the back, he was a father of two, really good sense of humor, but kind of a quiet sense of humor, you know. He says, so Dave, what do you non-working foresters call it? That just cracked me up. But anyway, the terminology, sorry, I'll get to the point here. So pruning, trimming, shearing, what the heck are we talking about? And so I'm going to have to give you my definition. I apologize, because to me, trimming, you know, you trim a tree or you trim a shrub or shear a shrub. To me, those are synonymous terms. So to me, a trimming or a shearing means you're taking off a bit of growth, like they do in Christmas trees, right? And they'll do multiple branches at one sweep a lot of times. Or you're doing a shrub where you're trying to shape it, but you're just taking off a little bit of that more recent growth. And so that's how I view shearing and trimming. To me, pruning, I'm taking off woody tissue. I'm taking off a branch. Even though I just had a call yesterday from a neighbor and went over and he had euonymus, burning bush. And the problem is, in front of his house, he has burning bush, but they're getting too big for the screens he's made. And he has to cover them because the snow comes down. So last year he compressed everything. This year he wanted to, you know, do something a little different. Well, so I went over to see, because I'm not really a shrub guy, but he had a couple of main stems that were coming up, but there was enough growth in there that we could trim those out without any problem damaging. And so the big thing is, anytime, especially on the conifers, when you're shearing or even pruning, if you want growth after that, you can't go too far back. There's got to be buds there for that to fill in. If you leave a stem and there's no buds on it, then that's going to rot. And that could be a problem for your root, or in a tree. I'll show you an example of that. So anyway, pruning to me is where we're cutting woody tissue and we're taking off a limb. But it could also be a top pruning. They use that term in Christmas trees. Or in the case of this burning bush, it could be just a main stem where I'm cutting off some wood, but I'm not shearing it to shape it necessarily, right? It could be a combination of those things. So anyway, to me, that's what pruning is, that I'm cutting woody tissue and I'm taking a branch off. So anyway, now it comes to pruning, and I guess the three big questions are going to be why, how, and when. And I'll do the how at the end here, where we actually do a demo. So I guess the why would be a lot of good reasons. Number one, you've had storm damage. And then the timing becomes a question there, depending on what you're dealing with. So storm damaged tree, or animal damaged tree, or person damaged tree. Let's say that the branch is dead and you want to take off dead or diseased tissue, because around here we have, on cherry trees or cherries, there's a fungal infection, and you need to go 6 inches back away from that to make sure that fungus doesn't go into the tissue, the living tissue. And to be sure that you've gotten the fungus, so you'll clip that off at least 6 inches back from the black knot disease. Some of you are familiar with it, and I've seen it on plums. I am very hesitant when somebody says it's disease resistant. Yeah, good luck with that. I have not seen a lot of luck, whether it's elm trees that are supposed to be resistant or cherries. So, but you know, be forewarned. So anyway, dead branches, diseased branches, damaged branches. Sometimes, like one of my neighbors does not like to mow with branches in the way. So he will prune his trees up so he can mow. He doesn't want to be interfered, but have his work interfered with. The other thing is you have a branch, of course, as the branches get longer and longer and heavier, they'll dip down. Maybe they're in front of your window and you want to get rid of that. So there's a lot of good reasons. The other thing is, those of you that have been here a long time may remember on UMFK campus, there used to be, what would you say, at least 6 very large elm trees. And we're down to 1. And sadly, that one is really showing signs. And I knew, I saw signs years back, but I didn't have the money, the budget, same thing, I'm sorry, or the equipment to reach up, 3 stories to get at those branches. And so anyway, I saw it this past year, and it's really showing, that's our last big tree on campus. So that's a shame. So Dutch elm disease and dying and dead branches on elm bring beetles, and beetles will breed in that dead and dying tissue. It needs to be at least 2 inches in size though. And so if the fungus is in that branch that has died, because it may have caused that death, maybe or maybe not, but most likely when you see a lot of them, then you need to prune that off, because beetles get in there and then spread it to other trees. Many of you, I'm sure, have been to Quebec City. That's one of the most successful elm programs in North America. They have spent a lot of money. They treat the boles of the tree when the insects are out. They cut off dead tissue. They inject with an insecticide. They spent a lot of money, and their trees are spectacular. I happened to be in Quebec for a conference, and the guy who did their program, Dr. Dick Campana from the University of Maine, the mayor gave him a champagne reception. That's how much they revered this guy for saving their elm trees. I got to drink a little champagne with the mayor. That was pretty cool.
We don't have any for you, Dave.
No, it's okay. I don't handle a saw and drink at the same time. So anyway, there are a lot of good reasons for why we need to prune. Anybody think of anything else I might have forgotten? Okay, so anyway, there's a lot of good reasons to prune, and now the question, I want to do the when next, because that's the tricky one. The method is actually quite easy, especially if they're really small, which I prefer, and they heal quicker that way too. So the when is, when you read this on the internet, they say late winter. The problem with that phrase is when late winter, because if you're too close to the spring, you're going to get some sap flow when the tree starts pushing sap. So I like to say winter, and for us, late winter, you better have snowshoes, right? So to me, it's after there's dormancy, when the leaves are off the tree, I think you're safe, okay? When I do my Christmas trees, I do the tops. I have just like 5 Christmas trees for my wife and I, for the next 5 years, hopefully. And I come in the winter to do the tops because she wants a 9-foot tree. And I'm getting to the point where if I have to come up here and drag it out in the snow, I'm at that point where, okay, this is going to be a 6-foot tree any day. But and also, I like organic, and I like a tree where you can hang an ornament and it's not laying on the side of the tree. So I actually do an internode distance. It's quite large. But anyway, I'll do that in the winter, and technically that's more shearing, but just a top prune. So anyway, the general rule, and this would be good for any of the conifers, elms and oaks aside, and bleeding trees aside, not too late in the winter, okay? And for us, when the leaves are off, I think you're safe. Okay, now that gets into the bleeders. According to the literature, and some of this I haven't seen, but maples for sure. will bleed like crazy any time of year you cut them almost. Birches are on the list. Populus is on the list. Beech is on the list. I haven't done any summer pruning of populus or beech to know. But also on the list, for those of you that may live elsewhere in the winter or have family or friends, walnuts. Hop hornbeam could be a problem, and we do have those here. The ironwood would be a hornbeam. What else am I forgetting?
How about the acorn? My son's got a tree.
The oak tree?
Oh,
that's an oak.
Oh,
Yes, ma'am. Yep. Yeah, and we're going to do one. We're going to do some pruning on that. I know I'm missing something. Let me check my cheat sheet here. Oh, mulberry trees. I grew up around mulberry trees. I love those trees. And they bleed like crazy. They're very light wood. Dogwoods. That's what I forgot. Dogwoods. I think I got everything. Oh, and willow is on the list. I've not pruned any willow, honestly. Because most of the willows I have are, you know, it's a tree, but it's, if you lose a stem, it becomes a shrub easily.
When you say willow, is it a pussy willow tree?
I think they're talking about probably black willow and weeping willow for sure. I know they're talking about, which I haven't seen too many in ever in northern Maine. Have you ever seen a
Ornamental.
Okay, you have. Yeah. Okay. I've seen plenty of black willow in yards, but I haven't seen any weeping. But anyway, I'm not looking either. So maple for sure. I have actually pruned maple in the fall and it's bled in the spring. You know, and it's not bleeding profusely, but that's what they're worried about. So what they recommend for flowering trees like dogwood, and maybe there's others like, if you live further south, there's going to be other flowering trees like magnolias and redbud.
Crabapple? I mean, is that in that?
I don't think I worry about crabapple at all. Not at all.
Okay.
I don't see that as a bleeder, really. So at any rate, for those trees, like dogwood, which is known as a bleeder, and for maples and such, they actually recommend in the growing season, after the full leaf out, and things have kind of hardened off, so the leaves are pretty green by then, to do your pruning then. Honestly, I have all the maples that I've pruned, I've actually done after leaf fall. And I get a little bit of sap run, and it's not too dangerous. So I'm going to stick with, and then most of those other trees, I have not seen any bleeding on birch. On paper birch is mostly what I've done. And I do those in the fall as well. And I'm doing them in the fall so I don't have to go out on snowshoes. Storm damage, you're going to have to decide. Do you want to wait till things settle down and the leaves fall off, or do you want to do it now after the storm? And I've done that, and with not too many consequences, bad consequences. And trees are pretty darn resilient. I mean, we do a lot of stupid things with them. And the other thing I just remembered, and that takes me back to your field trip to the apple orchard, and that's crossing branches. That's another why the branches are crossing. So on my maple tree in my front yard, side front yard, I had a bunch of branches crossing, and they rubbed each other. Sometimes they'll grow together, but nectria canker got into one of them, so I ended up pruning them both off. So that can happen. But like I said, to me, the big tree around here that bleeds is maples, any of the maples, red maple particularly. But I don't have any, I haven't dealt with any sugar maple, but I'm sure it bleeds as well as the red maple. So any questions? Any other questions? There were a couple anyway.
Fruit trees.
Yeah, I haven't done a lot of fruit trees except for, I have done crabapple on my own apple tree. And I was telling Don, did I tell you? Yes, I did. Don and I were having a conversation. It was just after the field trip that I wasn't able to go on, unfortunately. I was out in Columbia River, and it was towards the fall, and they near harvest, And I went down the Columbia River because I was in the Scablands hiking. And I wanted to see the apple orchards, and there was also an Indian interpretive museum at this one reservation along the Columbia. And the trees there will grow up to about this high, I guess, and then they have them forked. So there's two major branches coming out. The whole center is open for airflow. And so one of the reasons you're doing pruning on apple trees, one is to increase airflow because apple scab, which is a fungus that can grow on the bark, it can grow on leaves, it can grow on fruit, it can grow on the buds. If you have airflow and they dry out quicker, then you don't get the fungus, which is on the ground on infected tissue. So at any rate, that's one reason. The other is also for ease of picking. As Don pointed out, your tour guide was talking about how the branches droop down. That's what Don was telling me. That makes sense. And I'm sure that this forked thing, and these were professional pickers that were coming in, and that's for ease of picking, I'm certain. And the big crates of apples were getting ready to be picked. I saw the crates, not so much the apples in the crates. And so the crossing branches also to cut down on that problem. So, and then the other thing is too, the more open it is, not just airflow, but it's also easier to reach and get at fruit. And the fruits will, if there's less fruit, it's a bigger fruit, right? That's the other thing. But I'm not a fruit tree expert at all. That's all I know right there. I know how to plant them. Yes, ma'am.
Pruning stimulates growth, is that correct? In some species?
I've heard that said many times. And in fact, I heard recently on a trip where I was down at a reef company in September, early September, and they made that statement. And I know if you prune the top or shear the top of a tree, it will stimulate lateral growth. And but I think that's more hormonal. But I don't have a good answer for that. I have to do some more research.
Because I've been asked, somebody said they have this cedar hedge or whatever, and it's getting unsightly, and they want to prune it, and it was like August, July or August. I said I would wait, because I don't want if it stimulates growth, you don't want it growing, and then the frost comes and kills the new
I don't think that, I honestly, I've heard that statement many times, and I don't know that that's true, honestly. I don't know. But I'll tell you one thing, though, when it comes to fertilizer, nobody should be fertilizing around here into June, I don't think. Or if you do it in June, then one treatment early spring, and then that's it. Because that will stimulate growth. And not only that, but the nitrogen will make it very attractive to all kinds of pests, so one of the tipping people said that tipping the trees, tip to take leaders so you can make a reef out of it. Tipping the trees was stimulated growth. I'm going to have to do research because my gut feeling is no, but I'll do some work on it, let you know.
I just didn't want to take a chance. I
think that's fine. And besides, August, I would have been waiting till when things really hardened off. Like it's safe on Christmas trees that are balsam fir, that once the buds are set in August, you can probably shear then. But I would always wait till the growth is done, till they're dormant. And then you're not going to have resin. That's the one thing about pines. You cut a pine, I have a shed and I had to cut some branches back from the shed and there was still some growth there. I just wanted the thing off of my roof so it wouldn't touch the roof. And so I cut it at a bad time of year and the resin came out of that thing like crazy. So especially those, even this time of year, like I had to prune a branch that was rubbing up against my wood pile, so I pruned it off, and resin didn't come out, but resin was all in the sapwood of, it was a jack pine branch that I did. I did that, I don't know, it was about 3-4 weeks ago maybe. I'm trying to remember if it was before, might have been the end of August. I think it was the end of August or something, yeah, I think that's safe to say.
We had probably about a 75-foot hedge in front of our house up at our last house, and it was all planted spruce when they were just small.
Right.
When we left, the hedge was about 6 to 7 feet tall, and it had all grown together.
Yeah.
And in March, I would go out on snowshoes and do the trimming on it, because I did it one summer from a ladder, and it was a pain in the rear end. It was way easier to do it in the winter.
Thanks, Don. That's a good point.
It all filled in really, really nice. When we left, it was in really good shape, you know.
Yeah, and they'll fill in. There's no doubt about it. And maybe that filling in makes people think it's growing more. Maybe that's it. So anyway, Don brings up a good point that I wanted to talk about in terms of the trimming and stuff. And I am guilty of it. Oh, sorry, Don. I am guilty of it as much as anybody, and that is we never plant trees far enough away from whatever we want them. You have to kind of think like 10, 15 years into the future. And so anyway, when we plant, a lot of people will take a native cedar tree and plant it, you know, as a cover for their house. And it's not long, they're up against the house. And cedar trees 30 to 60 feet tall. So you're going to have to be on a ladder a lot to shear those. There are varieties out there of arborvitae, for example, that only grow to 13 feet or only grow to a certain height or grow more slowly. But the other thing is that Don made me think of is when you do start to shear trees or shrubs, think about it early, right? Before it gets beyond where the growth is, especially if you're dealing with a pine or even fir that can have 8 years worth of needles. If you cut too far back, there's no more buds. And then you have all these dead sticks. So start shearing it sooner and it'll be fuller for a while. Yes, ma'am?
How about a little 3-year-old cedar? When do you start trimming or pruning?
Well, I guess the real question is how close is it to what, you know, how much room do you have around that cedar?
A couple of feet.
So,
And it's all open, but it's close to the building.
okay, then I would be starting to think about a little bit each time now. Yeah,
This time of the year.
especially, yes, when you see the leaves off all the trees, then you can do it. And the reason I'm not saying do it in winter is because then you're dealing with snow.
I want to trim it that looks like eventually will look like a Christmas tree.
Okay.
So I can decorate it outside.
Yeah.
It's just a young baby, just a couple, 2-3 years old.
Well, I think most of the Christmas tree growers, don't quote me, but they're going to wait till something's 3 feet tall before they really do too much. Okay. Because if you think about Christmas trees, they'll have a handle. Is that what the butt of the tree? You're going to have that bottom part of the tree that's going to be branchless anyway, so they can get in there and cut it, and it can go into a tree stand. Yeah. So yeah, I'd be thinking about
Cedar. I'm talking my cedar. Okay.
Yeah. I'd start shaping it right now. Okay. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Witch's broom.
Yes.
Got a number of them around.
On fir or on?
Something like this here.
Yeah, on balsam fir. Witch's broom is caused by quite a few fungi. One is fireweed. So these fungi have different hosts and different weird life cycle, right? So they'll spend part of their life on, let's say it's blueberry. And this is just balsam fir now. Blueberry. There's a fern rust, there's a couple of them, fireweed. So if you look at Christmas tree growers, they will usually herbicide any fireweed they have in their area because they don't need that. So that's what could be caused. But if you start to see that growth, you could snip it off.
I can snip it off.
Yeah.
Got some big ones, right? This place, well,
Yeah, if they're pretty big, it's probably in that branch, but I would prune the branch off if you can.
If I can, yeah.
Yeah.
I see a couple way up on it.
Yeah, because what's happening is the fungus gets in there and the tree gets confused by the hormones. And I don't know if the hormone is a response of the tree or what I suspect is the fungus. And so that hormone starts the tree to go grow like crazy, and you get this broom. And it's sucking a lot of energy out of the tree to do that. So that's the bigger issue other than the unsightliness.
Will it kill the tree though? In time?
It could kill the branch, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It takes a while to get into the bole of the tree, but it's not good, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I say, you want to go at least 6 inches back so you can get most of the fungus. Did I see another hand? All right, so why don't we walk around here, we'll keep our distance from that stuff. I shook them all, nothing's coming down, but we don't want to be leaning on them. We're going to go right around here. An acorn from the Pleasant Street Church, the Unitarian Church. It came from an oak there. There's also one that was for our forestry student that died some years ago, Thomas Mackey. And that was also one that came from an acorn from that church. And it's right in front of Nowlin Hall, where there used to be 2 big elms, if I remember correctly. So come on up and take a look at this. This was a dead branch that I should have taken care of a long time ago, and you'll see the rot has come in. Just please watch your step. Believe it or not, I did come right up to check it out.
What is this, Dave?
Tilia or cordata. Yeah, but it's not American basswood. It's
Okay.
little leaf linden, right? Yeah. So see the decay there?
Yeah.
So the heart is sound, but there's the decay where the sapwood was.
I love these little trees.
Anybody want to take a closer look? Please feel free. We good? Yeah. Okay. Okay, well, I'm pretty nearsighted, so I guess I need to be told that. So anyway, if you look here, especially from this side, you can see this is sticking out a little bit. I couldn't go in there without cutting into the bark, which is a no-no. So the first thing about pruning, you do not want to stub. But you don't want to go so deep that it takes forever to heal over. So this is an oak. I'm not worried about oak wilt, but I should have taken that branch off. This has been kind of doing its own thing for a while. So what we're going to do is this lower branch here, we're going to take that off. And when you're doing pruning on any kind of decent stem, any size stem, and don't think that a small stem can't rip the bark down, right? So if I were just to come in here and cut like this, when that weight came off, it could tear into the bowl. And I've seen it even on smaller branches. So what we're going to do is 3 cuts. So what I'll do, I want this weight off of that, right? Now, the other thing is, if you had shrubbery out here or your garden or something like that you wanted to protect, then I would be snipping this back a little at a time. But nothing here to worry about. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to have a stub when I'm done. And also, I picked this one because, well, access here, but you see how this is swollen, has these shoulders? If you go to the branch directly over this one up there, you see that nice shoulder? That shoulder is ideal. So I'm not going to cut deep into it. I'm going to cut just where you see that shoulder start, because then it'll heal over quickly. Is everybody clear on what I'm talking about, or should I point to it somehow? Okay, so where that swelling is, I'm going to keep that. Because if I cut into it, I'm going to increase the surface area by factor of 2, probably. Okay, so I would love to have had one of those to do, because they're so much easier. Now also, don't use a chainsaw at this height. This is pretty dangerous. When you have a chainsaw, and if you get kicked back, you may have a break, but it's going to hit you, and at best, you're going to have a concussion. But we're talking about something that's moving, I forget what the speed is, but it's pretty deadly. So at any rate, if you can, now if you're dealing with a big thing like that and it's low to the ground, chainsaw, you know, that side branch, if I wanted to take that off, you know, I would be using a chainsaw. That's a lot of cutting. So at any rate, the thing I have to deal with is the shoulder. I'm not going to be able to get in here too tight, but you can see I have a little bit of a shoulder here. So if I did my last cut, I'm going to do that last cut here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do an undercut. I could go in a little closer if I want. I'm going to do an undercut about here. You know, I have plenty of room to play around with. Then I'll come out a little bit and do a second cut, an uppercut there. And what's going to happen is that's going to snap. And if you did have stuff out here you were worried about, if you just cut it slowly until it snaps, it'll come down, not fall all the way to the ground. And if you had somebody to help, then they could be out there, right, if you didn't cut it back a little at a time. So we'll do, cut number one is going to be an undercut. Cut number two will be the uppercut. It'll snap off, drop to the ground. And then I'm going to come back and I'm just going to cut this right about here, because I can get in with the saw and I'm going to protect this shoulder right here as best I can. And, you know, about every other one I butcher anyway, so that's what we'll do here. And like I said, the last time I didn't have safety glasses, I had a screen. It did not work. I still got sawdust in my eye. So I'll do that and I'll have you folks step back. And I'll change uniforms. Oh, I didn't talk about tools. I'm sorry. So if you have some shears, some people don't like the compression shear. They prefer the other shear, whichever you prefer. On smaller twigs, which I did to clear that out, because we're going to go over here in a minute, you can use these. This was a Martin special. And this is, I got this really cheap, but the thing is, they didn't come with a sheath. And this is about my fourth or fifth one in the last 30 years, because I end up getting stuck and I end up snapping them or bending them or something. So if you go gentle, you're better off with those. But just so I could find it and not lose it.
Just a question, do you find, that's a straight blade, right?
Yes, there are some that are a little more curved, but this is a straight blade.
Do you find a difference? Do you recommend one versus the other?
This is the curved blade, and I have no choice but to use this because I don't have a straight one for this fitting.
Yep.
And I find that the curved blade will sometimes stick a little bit more, but honestly, that's for out of reach stuff.
Yep.
And that you could actually work from the other side a little bit with the curved blade. All my other ones are a little more or less straight. This is my preference.
Okay.
It's easier to control, but when I'm up too high, I can't use this.
Okay.
But this is my preference. I had a really nice one that I just lost a couple years ago from snapping, and I didn't bring it over because I only had the one sheath. It's only half the length. I still use it though, because I love it. And notice the fineness of the teeth. So all of you have seen those camping saws, the bow saw. Those can be a little too coarse. And so if you're doing ornamental, this is in your front yard or something, you'll want to use something with a finer tooth. Is it okay to use a regular carpenter saw? Yes. Yeah, if that's all you have, it'll make a nice cut. It's going to take you a little bit longer because the teeth are finer, but it's not going to dig and make like the camping saw does, right? It's a little too much for teeth. So you can see the fineness of this, and it's actually got a little bit of a thickness here. The teeth are actually a little wider because they're bent out a little bit. What's the word I want?
Set.
The set? Yeah. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And unfortunately, we used to have somebody around that they sharpen saws, and we don't have that anymore. at least as far as I know. Okay, so what am I forgetting? My other glove that I just dropped somewhere. Where are you? And it's brown. Thanks. And I'm in the sun. Okay. So we'll do the undercut first. It's actually be easier with the other saw, but because I am height challenged. Now I don't have to go too far, because if I go beyond half, it's going to pinch, right? So probably I've gone enough, but you can see how sloppy I get sometimes. I could bend the saw. So anywhere right in here, just beyond this. And Laura, the bent saw would actually catch the other side of this pretty well. And I'm a lefty, so this is my preference here, but I'm a little challenged by height. I'm on my tiptoes. I probably could have gone a little closer. And I'm reaching over to get the other side a little bit too. Yeah, see, I probably should have gone a little closer. First time I used this saw. I guess I should have tried the other one. But that's a lot of weight. There we go. And I should probably be wearing steel toes. Okay. Let me pull this out a little bit. And then my third cut will be here. And I don't know if you can see it, but I run the risk of hitting this other side if I go in too far. So sometimes you're best to start from the other side, and you can see where I'm coming out over here. I'm going to be a little further on this side. Right here. I can't see it. So I think I'll start from here. Am I clear on the other side? Probably too much, but I'm right against the bark here, but I'm not, I might be debrading it, but I'm not. Tag team?
How old is the tree?
Good question. It would be, well, that branch I could count, but is that what you were thinking of? Let's see, what year would that have been? Probably 90, 91 was a seedling.
How big was the tree when you planted it?
It grew from acorn.
Are you serious?
Jonathan Cruey had also given me some seedlings that he collected from the same tree. So I'm not sure. One of them was one that I grew from acorn. The other one was one Jonathan grew. He gave me a bunch from acorn. The hare were eating the ones he had put out. He had them in pots, and the snowshoe hares were eating them, so he gave them to me. But see my problem here? I could maybe come back in and play with that a little bit, but I would definitely cut the other side. So it's not ideal, but you got the idea.
So Dave, what's the maximum length of a stub or whatever that you would say is acceptable to leave?
When I look at that, I feel like that's a little too much. Yeah. Honestly.
because it's going to take too long to grow over it.
Yeah, now, the thing is, as long as I have pretty good growth, you will see some callus and some growth there. And if you look on this side right here, I probably could have left a little bit more here, but come on a better angle. If I had come on a little bit better angle, I could have taken some of this off. So I could play around with it some more if I wanted to. Which, if you weren't all here, I probably would, to be very honest.
What kind of tree is it that you cut a branch like you just did and just put it in the soil and it'll grow branches, it'll grow another tree? What kind of tree? My dad used to.
All aspens will do that.
Oh, really? Aspen?
Yeah, but you know, it's got to be not too dry and not too much foliage pulling what, but almost all populous. Some of you were at my talk on, I talked about cottonwood out in, I showed a slide that was from the Missouri River in Montana, and those were all just river branch landed on the bank somewhere and it grew into a tree. Cottonwoods, that's how they populated the river systems. But also, I'm trying to think, there are other rooters. You know, I've seen this tree right here in my yard. I actually had a photograph in my talk where the branch took root and became another tree. But I don't know if you could cut it and it would root like that. Maybe with root hormone, I'm not sure. But aspens, populous for sure. Okay, so anyway, I thought we would tackle this and you can get a close-up look. I'll move the saw out of the way. I trimmed off of this, so you can see this here. This one's going to be a little bit easier to do in terms of reach. This one is a little leaf linden, Tilia cordata, but Tilia americana is the native American elm.
Basswood.
Basswood is another name. So Tilia, basswood, I said elm, excuse me. Linden, not elm, excuse me. It's not an elm. So at any rate, can everybody see this okay? So I have a lot easier job here. I'll still do the 3-cut piece because I don't want it ripping down, because it do that pretty easily. We're good?
Do we still have any left? I know they planted some in the town.
Yeah.
Do we still have any left in town?
Yes, there's a couple, and on Main Street for sure. And then where did I just see somebody else had one planted in town?
We used to have one in our yard. It was
Yeah.
a beautiful tree.
Oh, you're more than welcome. I got a ton of them here. Bring a shovel. I'll be happy to give you. In fact, if I know there's beekeepers, I give them seedlings of this, because then it takes pressure off the native bees. All right.
So the ones you would dig up, are they from seed or are they like root sprouts or something?
They're all from seed.
So, yeah, cool.
The seed is a little hard to germinate. You have to fuss with it quite a bit. And I mess with it, and I'm not Neil Thompson. That guy is really good at propagation. I'm sure he could do this in his sleep. So I did get some, but I'm coming out here. I actually think it's invasive. I'm leaning towards thinking it's more invasive. You walk up through here, you're going to see them all over.
Wow.
But they need a cold treatment, and they don't just germinate like tomato seeds or something. Questions? Okay, so I'm going to just do the 3-cut thing. Do an undercut. This one's a little bit easier. This is softer wood than oak too. And it's not as much weight, so I probably didn't even need to because it's touching the ground. But right here, you could kind of fuss with this and knock that back a little bit, but I think we're okay. This is a little bit of cork response. So you actually looks like cork, it is. I just have to watch I don't cut over here. And I went a little too deep on the bottom, I see now. I should have paid more attention. Okay, lesson learned. Yeah, I cut too much into the cork. Okay, here's what not to do. So, see what I did? I could have come a little higher. And then I'm going to clean this up because it won't heal as easily. I made it worse. But take a good look at that. And you can see this one I did, this is ideal. If I had this all the way around, that top is ideal. Just don't trip.
Normal time for healing.
I say years. Yeah. Because, so thank you. That leads me to a really good point I should make. If you can get ahead of it, then you're going to have a smaller wound and it'll heal more quickly. So my students and I, when I was teaching forestry, my first 10 years, I did the chainsaw class and we would do thinning and pruning and stuff. And they're still, I mean, that was 20 years ago, before 2000. What's this? And there's still some that you can still see a little bit of wood that hasn't completely healed over. And those were all spruce. These grow pretty quick. And but that's still going to take many years to heal over. So what do you think? Are we good or? Yes.
I was told by a sawmill operator that for a white cedar it takes 150 years for to harvest it. 150 years. I
don't disagree at all because my students and I would go out and we've been in a few cedar swamps.
Yep.
And a 9-inch tree, every 9-inch tree we measured, there was not one of them that was under 90 years of age. And that was in Wallagrass, down past where Don and Reggie used to live.
Because in 1992, I planted like 50 black spruce.
Yeah.
And they're up like 30 feet now.
Yeah.
They're doing good.
Now you said cedar earlier though, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Just wanted to be clear.
White cedar, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of these trees will grow tall fast, but cedar puts on wood slowly, and that's kind of a good thing because I remember years ago talking to a guy, I go back to, I think it was 1985, 86, somewhere in there, 87, and he worked in New Brunswick, and he was messing around with fast-growing varieties. I know Irving also was experimenting with that. And I asked him about, what's the disadvantage of the fast growing? And he said, well, we're watching for warping. That the denser rings, is a little bit better. You're certainly not going to use fast growing, thick, fatter rings for piano keyboards or piano sounding boards, whatever that piece is called. But a lot of good questions. Thank you.
Linda's father ran a sawmill, and I worked there part-time when I was a kid. We used to spruce there.
Yeah.
Evergreen spruce. So, and the question is, I have 2 bucksaws, a metal one and a wooden one. That's about 100 and some years old. What's the worth of that? Money.
Oh, I have no idea. You need to go to PBS and look at what is the show? Antiques Roadshow. You'll get a good answer.
Let's do it.
Yeah, it's old.
That is cool.
Very good condition.
Yeah, well, that's one thing I cherish is my grandfather. Both grandfathers, I have crosscut saws from them. Because I grew up in South Jersey, and we were called the Garden State for a good reason. Both of my grandfathers cleared and gardened 2 acres. And one of them was a printer in Philadelphia, but he still gardened. He had a tractor. The one in the Pinelands didn't have a tractor, but my grandfather was a printer, had a tractor. Until the company took his retirement, and he was left with $6 a month. Yeah, so he sold everything. Anyway, that's another story.
But the one with the wooden one, see, my great grandfather was there. I mean, he was doing the wood,
By hand,
the lumber. Yeah.
Yeah.
with horses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
even my father did it with horses, you know, and that was.
All my family immigrated into Philadelphia. Every branch of my family. And my grandfather married his wife, and she was German. This was before the First War. And so anyway, after the Depression, they moved to the Pinelands because they could get land cheap. And my grandfather, he certainly wasn't lazy. He ended up getting the job of clearing all the roads for the town. Him and my oldest aunt did that. Well, they would take turns felling and hauling, skidding. So, yeah, unfortunately, he died the year I was born, Hurricane Hazel, 1954. I don't remember that. Anything else?
Dave,
Yes, sir.
if you look at the tree you're on.
The spruce?
Yeah, no,
This one.
If you look at the dead branch, if you're going to prune, this is the main stem.
Up here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you want to get rid of the branch? Do you do anything different than from a live branch?
Thanks, Don. A dead branch can be cut any time of year. You just don't want to hit, especially in the spring. I wouldn't do it in the spring. I'd wait till after the sap was done flowing, because if you accidentally cut into the stem, which you could scrape it, it's going to bleed. So I would wait till after spring, and then dead branches any time of year, really.
You cut it the same way? I mean,
If there's weight, yes. But something like this, I would just cut right through. You want me to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. Don wants me to make my pay for my salary.
now I'm just curious.
Either that or Don was trying to do another height joke against me.
I want to see how close to get to the tree, or does it matter?
Okay, no, this is good. You see the shoulder right here? That is actually trying to grow around that dead stem. So I'm not going to cut into that, hopefully. And the curved blades are really hard to start, and I can't see here. No, I still can't see. I'm going to scrape the tree if I do that too much. So I'm pushing away just to get it started. And it's dead, so it's going to go pretty easily. But see, I get a little slop there at the end. I don't want to cut into that tissue. And I did cut into the bark a little bit, but I didn't get past the cambium, that's for sure. And if you look down here, there's a hole. So the decay that's probably already in here, that's going to survive. This is going to die long before that will introduce any decay, probably, if it isn't already there. Other questions?
So the case of that spruce, we have
Yes.
a lot of situations like that
We're raising our hands.
No, that's okay.
where we call them eye pokers because there's branches
Yes.
like this all over the place. You're trying to walk back and
Yeah.
you're ducking, and you should have safety glasses on in our case. So they could be cut
Yes.
as they're dead. And
Absolutely, and I thought about using that as a specimen because they have a really nice shoulder to use, And what I was going to do was going to get my full safety gear, go in with the chainsaw, and hack myself a trail. So I'd find a little opening, make some room, make some more room until I get in there. And then you'll have to decide, you know, the chainsaw can go awry very quickly, awry, or however you say it, very quickly. And if you scrape that, you're going to get resin. So, but that's what I would do. Pardon?
Is the time of year important for that?
They're dead? No.
No.
But again, it's the same thing with this. In the spring, it's going to, if you hit it, the bark, it's going to run sap and resin. Yeah, and also balsam fir. You lean on the tree and there's resin on the, you know, it's all over you. This one, the spruce, this is a white spruce. It's not that bad, but anyway, you can see that from shading and stuff. And then back here, I cut, well, this isn't me actually. Out there was me. But I would have cut this all back probably. I was really just trying to block the view because I got a brush pile up there. And I didn't want anybody to come by and torch it. Or,
I wanted to get one of those little pruning chainsaws.
yeah.
But the problem is a lot of the branches are like smaller than an inch in diameter.
Yeah.
Should I really be using that on something that's like a twig? Or should I just...
Yeah, I would. You can use a chainsaw, but when you go into it, go in at a good speed. Not the tip, right? So along the bottom, come into it at a good speed and it'll cut it good. But you don't want to, you want to avoid that tip and getting some kickback from it. But I would have done a chainsaw for sure. But again, just the spring, be careful. And if you really need it, I'll be happy to lend you my saw. So don't buy one.
We have enough trees that buying one would...
Oh, you need to? Okay, in that case, yeah.
I guess it's a stupid question, but why does it matter if when you prune it, if the tree bleeds? I mean, you know, in the springtime, if presuming you don't cut into the bark and stuff like that, but why does the sap running, why is that a negative?
Well, for the tree bleeders, the tree care industry would tell you it really doesn't matter except for insects.
Okay.
So that's why they're saying for the real bleeders like maple, do them in the summer.
But what do the insects do?
They'll eat the sap and they could introduce disease. And mostly that's oak and elm.
But doesn't, I mean, wouldn't the sap continue to run and push it out? No? Push out any disease?
Not necessarily.
No, okay.
Yeah,
I was thinking if it's continually running,
yeah,
it's gonna...
I think it's just the profuse running in the spring.
Okay.
So it would be pretty profuse,
Yeah.
as you know.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Okay.
So they're saying it's if it's a bleeding tree or a flowering tree, like a dogwood, magnolia, that are going to flower,
Yep.
wait till the flowers are done. Or even lilac for that matter, right? Around here we have lilacs. Wait till the lilac flowers are done, then you can do your snipping and pruning.
Okay.
So I know I'm not quite answering your question well, but...
No, that's okay. I just was curious.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Dave,
Done.
Right up above your head, there's some rings up there. Bugs, disease.
What am I looking at, Don?
Right
Sap
up
sucker.
above, right straight up.
Oh, on the bowl,
Sap sucker.
like this.
Yeah, like that. And
The yellow belly sapsucker, my nemesis. Yeah, they've killed a couple of trees. I had a...
big spot up here.
Oh yeah, that's all sapsucker. In fact, one time I was doing the woolly, and we're coming down the Bully Mountain, and there was a paper birch that had sapsucker, and there were bees and even a hummingbird going after the sap.
I've seen that.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
But I had I grew up around in South Jersey where there's mulberry trees that are like considered weeds. And God, I love mulberries. I could eat those all day. So St. Lawrence Nursery had developed a cold variety for northern climates, mulberry tree. So I bought two of them, or one of them at the time. And I planted that, and I was getting mulberries, and you know, and that thing will flower like day 2. The year after you plant it, you're getting mulberries if it's old enough, a couple years old. And the darn sapsuckers just devastated that tree. And my wife says, "Who were you yelling at?" I said, "That darn yellow-bellied sapsucker."
So how do you stop him?
It's illegal to shoot them. You can wrap your trees, but that's a lot of work. And that doesn't,
That has to invite disease,
it
I would think,
yeah, it doesn't help.
because
Yeah,
of the bugs being able to get in
yeah.
there as well.
And the fact is, on the mulberry tree, it girdled the tree. Right? It was the sapsuckers that literally killed the tree. So, but having insects doesn't always mean they're going to introduce disease. It's mostly, going back to Laura's question, is when you're dealing with oak, there's 2 beetles that will be attracted to sap as well as to dead tissue. Dead tissue is where they lay their eggs, their larval galleries. But they're going to be feeding, so it does attract them. But they have to be in the tree in order to introduce the fungus. And then oak, which isn't a problem up here, but south of us, those insects carrying disease as well for oak wilt. So, yeah, great questions. Thank you all. Anything else? Any other? Yes, sir.
You wouldn't trim a lilac tree this time.
Say again, please.
You wouldn't trim a lilac this time of year. You'd wait until spring.
No, I think you're safe because it's after the flowering. But I just happen to mention it since it is a flowering tree. I wouldn't bother me doing it now. But I'm not a shrub guy. Sorry, Don, I keep hitting your mic. Just to be honest about it. Mostly it's forest trees and pests that I know. Yes, sir.
I did an inventory of my trees on my piece of property there. I have 28 different trees.
Very cool.
Lilac, not name them, and they're here.
Huh.
And do you know Randy Martin?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay.
He's contributed a lot to
Yeah.
the area.
He gave us 2 chestnut seedling,
Nice.
and they're doing good.
Good, because you need to.
Yeah.
Because I have one, and I have burrs all over the yard. I mean, the biggest crop I've ever had, not a single chestnut, because I don't have a pollinator. I need another tree to pollinate.
And we have quite a few lilac.
Yeah.
White, purple,
Wow.
red, and they're beautiful.
Yeah, well, when it comes to lilac, find advice somewhere else. Because I have them, and I've transplanted them, and I've pruned them, but I wouldn't consider myself that knowledgeable on them. But I think you're fine this time of year. But just don't sue me if I'm wrong. Well, this is fantastic weather. I am pleased for that. I was worried because I didn't know what I'd do for an alternative. We didn't even put a rain date.
We didn't have a plan either.
So thank you for ordering the weather, Don Murray.
Yeah. Could have been raining because it's potato.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what,
Yeah, it has been dry though.
yeah.
And my wife and I came back up. We went down to the down East Coast. We do 2 weeks in Maine camping, 2 weeks in Maine. We do different sections of Maine. So we came up from down east, from Danforth on our way home, and it was dry everywhere. And I'm convinced that, well, these trees here, they've lost a lot of leaves, but some of that too is these have been completely defoliated from Forest 10 caterpillar at least 2 years in a row. I actually had, on the way you came in, I don't know which way you're going to go out, but on the way you came in, there was a clear cut area. It's about 2 acres, and then I have pasture below that, and I had it clear cut because it was on a slope. He couldn't do anything else, and I had tons of aspen in there, and I have regen like nobody's business, 6 to 8 and 9 feet tall. Every one of those was defoliated. And my birch trees, I was telling Don, I left some birch trees for future firewood, and they almost all died because they were defoliated too. And they don't respond like aspen can regrow. Birch doesn't make new buds once the season's over. It's kind of fixed growth. So I've lost quite a few birch, but the aspen hopefully won't get hit again. Otherwise, I'm not sure what'll happen if it's another year. But this whole woodlot, all the aspen, the birch, and even a few other things were defoliated. Not these, though.
Yeah, I was gonna say, they didn't go for those.
There's disease on this, and but relatively disease-free. And the bees, it's really good for the bees, so I keep... And you can see them here, look. This is same seedlings. It's all from this.
They smell good.
Yes, sir.
One more question.
Sure.
So you got a seedling tree,
Yeah.
you plant it. At what age do you start pruning, or when, or what triggers you the idea that you should start pruning the tree?
Okay, so it depends on if it's in the open and you don't worry about the branches touching the ground, you can let it go. If it's next to a building, as Madame had asked me earlier, then, you know, if you're getting within 2 feet of the building, you need to start thinking about shearing, because especially the conifers, right, you can only go so far back and then there's no buds. So you need to be watching that. So if you start soon, where there's still plenty of buds, then, and do a little bit each year, then you can control it a little longer. Eventually it's going to grow to the building, right? And then you'll have to, but that's more shearing than pruning. And then, of course, you get a rogue branch, and then you'll need to prune that off.
And what's a rogue branch?
Like the one that I just cut here.
Okay.
That's going somewhere where you don't want it.
Okay.
My neighbor would not, that would have been long gone because he wants to mow. He doesn't want stuff in his way.
Even from a little cedar?
Well, if you're mowing around it and it's not a problem, no, that's not an issue. But like bigger trees, he doesn't want branches touching the ground, which I understand. You want freedom to mow and your tree's still there.
Right, right.
I'm constantly ducking in my yard. In fact, I've done this a few times too. Well, I thank you all. For anything else?
These branches that we were talking about,
Yes, on
do
the
they ever not die off like that? Like, is that from crowding
from shade mostly.
shade?
Yeah, almost all that is from shade. White spruce likes drier site. Well, outcompetes other things on drier sites, but doesn't like too much shade. It's black spruce can tolerate a lot more shade. Would you say, Laura, than white? No.
Probably.
Yeah, these are black spruce over here, and you'll see that, you know, the branches in between, because they're close. I wanted a hedge, and the ones that are against the road, those are all black spruce. And so even shade will get to some of those branches. But most of this is shade, though.
The first one here, what is its name? The big, beautiful one over here.
I believe those are, I'll look closer, but I believe those were black spruce. I'll look closer. I wasn't sure in my head. Yeah.
I call them Christmas trees.
Yeah.
As long as they're green.
Yeah, well, the spruces you have to be careful because some of them will have a bit of a stench if you bring them in. So you want to stick to fir for Christmas trees. It grows well here. And just one final comment on a different subject, and that's since Don talked about planting. I don't like to plant in the fall because if it's a seedling, a little thing, the frost can kick it out of the ground. If it's something heavy and you mulch it, it won't be a problem. If it's potted, you know, and it's heavy enough, but on smaller stuff, they will get kicked out of the ground by frost, potentially. I remember one of my professors in West Virginia, he said he had experimental stuff out in the fields, and they were all in pots. And he says, I could tell how much damage I was going to have in my fields. This was in Missoula, Montana, I think. When I'd be in town, the more potholes, the more damage I had to my containers. Well, thank you all. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's do it again.
Yeah.